In this week's news, Desmond Tutu calls out Tony Abbott on climate change. Christian agencies helping out after Myanmar floods. And community service goes large-scale in Venezuela.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Former Archbishop of Cape Town Desmond Tutu is calling on Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, as well as the United Nations, to take immediate action on climate change. In an online petition, Emeritus Archbishop Tutu recommends a complete end to fossil fuel use by 2050. He says that if climate change is unchecked, the world can expect more extreme weather events and other natural disasters that, more often than not, affect the poorest and most vulnerable communities. Australia's Climate Change Authority and the Catholic Church's Caritas Development Agency are among the groups who expressed disappointment at the federal government's modest commitments to reducing Australia's carbon emissions. As same-sex marriage hits the headlines again, Christian and Muslim leaders have publicly indicated their opposition to changing the law in Australia. At a press conference in Sydney, the religious leaders headed by the Maronite Catholic bishop said that the weakening of marriage in Australian society has already had disastrous consequences in terms of broken families. They expressed concern for the welfare of children if families are deliberately established with the intent of separating children from their biological mother or father. They also expressed doubts that their faiths and ministers would be adequately protected from discrimination claims if marriage laws were extended to same-sex couples. In a separate event, a group of Aboriginal elders delivered a petition to federal parliament, also calling for current marriage laws to remain. Concern over alcohol-related harms in Western Australia has prompted a change in the law and calls for further restrictions on problem drinkers. According to the West Australian newspaper, the state government has passed new laws that ensure powdered alcohol products will be subject to government regulations. It's expected that a US-based company will begin selling powdered alcohol in Australia sometime this year. A number of West Australian communities are already struggling with alcohol-fuelled violence and crime. The state's top judge has called for Parliament to consider introducing laws that would prevent problem drinkers from being able to purchase alcohol.
The damage that alcohol causes in families, alcohol-related violence, alcohol health issues is absolutely astronomical. And anything that can be done to reduce the impact of alcohol is a really good move.
The Uniting Church in Australia is calling for prayer for the war-ravaged nation of South Sudan. In less than 2 years, thousands of lives have been lost in the civil war, 1.6 million people have been internally displaced, and millions are facing food shortages. Church leaders in South Sudan have made strong representations to the warring parties, saying that the current peace talks should bring about an immediate end to what they call a senseless war. Uniting church leaders in Australia say they're also praying for their members who are worried about their families in South Sudan. About 1.1 million people have had their homes or livelihoods threatened or destroyed after cyclonic storms and floods swept through 12 of Myanmar's 14 states. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, is among the organisations offering emergency relief to the survivors, delivering food packages, cooking utensils, blankets and temporary shelter.
Thousands of acres of farmland have been destroyed with mud and debris. Replanting for a November harvest is almost impossible at this stage, which could result in food insecurity for all of these communities which have been affected by the flood. That's why ADRA is moving into a livelihood response. We will look at handing out seeds and also giving out equipment to ensure these farmers can get back into restoring their livelihoods.
The families of 22 Assyrian Christian hostages released by ISIS are relieved that they are now safe, but are concerned for the welfare of the remaining 205 captives. ISIS captured the hostages in February this year when they occupied parts of Syria's Hasaka province, prompting 3,000 Assyrians to flee the area. The Assyrian Church of the East has been negotiating for the hostages' freedom. This time, 14 of the 22 released were women. According to the Assyrian International News Agency, negotiations are ongoing for the release of the remaining hostages. Following the Bible and their Baptist forebears, Seventh-day Adventists practiced adult baptism by immersion. But new research suggests that the Church could do better at preparing and supporting new believers. The Avondale College survey of almost 1,500 baptised adults revealed that a quarter of them received no intentional mentoring once they'd been baptised. The research also highlighted the dilemma of how to respond to a child's request for baptism. How young is too young? On the positive side, 80% of respondents, when asked if they saw themselves as part of the Church in 10 years' time, said definitely. In a large-scale community outreach push, 200,000 people have been shown the love of Jesus in 29 cities across Venezuela. The 9-day blitz saw 12,000 local Adventists donating blood, planting trees, visiting the sick, and providing a wide variety of services to the public. The event was dubbed Close to You, Venezuela. Smile, God loves you, and attracted considerable media attention. Church leaders say they're grateful for the thousands of volunteers who made the outreach possible and are hoping to make it even bigger next year. The winners of 2015's Australian Christian Books of the Year have been announced at an awards event organised by Sparklet in Melbourne. Taking out top honours was Michael Gladwin's History of Australian Army Chaplains. Judges described it as a book of national importance and an insight into the Australian character. Michael Gladwin's history headed up a strong field of contenders, covering apologetics, biblical studies and practical Christianity. The Young Australian Christian Writer Award went to Tim Sharp with his fantasy genre allegory, Undying. A church in Alabama has launched what just might be the world's first gun range ministry. The pastor of Rocky Mount United Methodist Church says that what started out as a community service teaching gun safety has become a unique setting for people to start exploring faith in Jesus. Everyone from pastors from other churches to families and elderly women have appreciated the gun range, which has recruited local police to help with training. And that's the news for this week. For more news, views and interviews, visit our website record.net.au. I'm Sibel Kute, God bless, and I'll see you next time.